Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais in Ontario, Canada, with episode number 149 of the Yakking Show. This is a show for awakening you to new perspectives in all sorts of different subjects, but all important for life and all equally important or more important in this changing times we're going through at the moment. So today's guest is no exception. She's going to be very interesting, and I'm not going to give the game away, but I'm just going to say she comes from a much warmer part of the world at the moment than we do. So it's not my job to introduce her. Kathleen does it far better than I do. But first, a quick plug for Kathleen. She wears another hat. She can help you solve your IT recruiting and development needs. So if you have problems in that area, get hold of her. So welcome, Kathleen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Peter. Thank you so much. And thank you for that plug. And we want to thank all of you for tuning into our show. We so appreciate you and we love reading your comments. So please keep those coming. And if anyone out there is interested in being a guest on the show, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Peter or myself. And as Peter mentioned, we do have another special guest with us today. And I'm so excited to interview this lady. I think you'll find her really, really interesting. Her name is Kathy Davis. Kathy, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am great, Kathleen. Thank you. Thank you to you, Kathleen. Thank you to Peter. Thank you to the listeners. I'm really excited to be here and share my story and inspire all of you.
Good. Now, I want to introduce you because I'm going to read off a script here because I don't want to miss anything. You are a plant-based accountability empowerment coach, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But you're also the CEO of VegInspired and the author of 3 cookbooks. Wow. The first is the 30-minute whole food plant-based cookbook. The second is the super easy plant-based cookbook. And then you have the budget-friendly plant-based diet cookbook. So Kathy, for our audience, can you give us something about your background and what led you to embark on a career involving a plant-based diet?
Oh, yes, Kathleen, thank you so much. I was pretty resistant to plant-based eating when the thought first came across my desk. My table would be a better word. My husband actually introduced us to it. And I was like, I'm a happy burger loving, blue cheese dipping, buffalo wing eater. Like, I don't need to eat more plants. Like, that's just not my thing. And he really positioned it to be more about eating more plants. And the more plant foods we ate, the more plant centered we ate, the better we felt. And what I found over the last 8 years of eating this way is that it can truly change your life. It can change your energy, your stamina, your, longevity. 2 years ago, I actually embarked on a journey to really clean up the vegan part of my diet, reduce a lot more of the processed foods, which I'm grateful that there's processed vegan foods on the market and that they're becoming more mainstream. But in order to perform at my peak performance, I really had to focus on the whole plant foods. And the results were incredible. I lost weight, regained control of my health, reduced a lot of the symptoms that I was having, inflammation, pre-diabetes symptoms, and really 10x my energy to be able to do all the things you just read about, running VegInspired full time, authoring those 3 cookbooks, and then scaling my coaching business internationally. And people always ask me why I do what I do. And I do it because the transformation from me eating more plants changed my life. And if I can help other people empower themselves, step into their peak performance and change their lives, the ripple effect is incredible. And that's what drives my mission.
Wow. Very good. So you have a lot on the go at the same time. So how do you manage a plant-based diet with such a hectic, busy lifestyle as you have? And I believe you travel a lot at the same time. So how do you put all that together?
I do travel a lot. That's the fun fact, right? One of the big things that I found is making plant-based eating more accessible and easy. A lot of times when we're introduced to such a significant change in what we do, the way we think, we embark on it with this mindset of overhauling everything. But what I've learned is start small. Maybe you start with breakfast. Maybe every day you eat a whole energizing breakfast. Or maybe it's lunch. Maybe you find yourself sluggish in the afternoon. And so for lunch, you really add in those high energizing foods. And what works for me is I prepare things that I can eat throughout the week. So I'll bake some extra potatoes when I've got the oven on, or I'll double a batch of rice. So I can easily chop up some veggies for a salad or a wrap and maybe have a potato or two on the side. Potatoes are extremely satiating and can be very satisfying and comforting without all the, I call the dairy like the inflammatory. So that's what really gives us that sluggish grog later in the day, because it's very inflammatory, and often doesn't agree with a lot of people's digestion. So if you just skip the dairy on the potatoes and just eat them maybe with a drizzle of maple mustard, or, thinking about foods you already enjoy that are plant-based and then making it more accessible. And, from that standpoint, it's really about what can I prep today so that I have an easy lunch for tomorrow.
All right. So it's doable then, no matter how busy you are, with a bit of proper planning can be done. Good. Kathleen?
Definitely.
Well, I think you've started to answer this, but let's take a deeper dive into this, because, people might seem it is an overwhelming task, because I have to tell you, a few months ago, I thought I'm going to go straight raw food. And I got a raw food cookbook, and my goodness, it was really overwhelming because everything had to be dehydrated. And the time it took to prepare one meal was, 12 hours of this, it was just on and on and on. Now, that's not what this is, right? It's vegan, it's still cooked, but it's plant-based, which is, I think, a bit easier. But how do you address, the like Thanksgiving and Christmas and things that, in the traditional North American diet, you have your turkey and you have your, your meats and all of that. How do you substitute those things that people, it's a social thing, right? It's enjoyable. How do you do that?
That's a great question. Social pressure, social engagements, traditions, all of those can be very, very challenging, especially it doesn't matter if you're eating more plants or going vegan or going keto or any change to your diet. When you pivot to something that's different from what's normal or what's traditional in your home or around your friends and family, you can feel very isolated. A few things, and really my philosophy is, me personally, it's been 8 years. So I've learned the easy substitutes. Early on, we just made things with vegan products. Now we really lean into the foods that we love with flavor and texture. So the mashed potatoes with a gravy made from, plants and a little soy sauce and a little vegetable broth and lots of traditional Thanksgiving spices, your sage, your rosemary, your thyme, all those, because those warm spices, those familiar spices help you tie back into those traditions. But when I'm working with new clients or clients that aren't necessarily looking to go fully plant-based, but really to just eat more plants, I talk a lot more about intention. When we're around family and friends, we have that influence, that paradigm or program or tradition, or that hold on how we've always done things. And if we embrace it more of my intention of Thanksgiving is to eat the foods that best align with my goals. But you know what? I might want a small sliver of grandma's apple pie. And, I really try to approach it more from the focus philosophy of making choices intentionally. Because when I cleaned up my vegan diet to eat more of this clean, whole food, plant-based approach, I still wanted the vegan key lime cheesecake when I traveled to Key West. I still wanted a glass of wine and a piece of vegan chocolate cake on my birthday. I still wanted to indulge at Disney World, and I didn't want it to feel so restricted that I couldn't do that. So I approached it from my day-to-day habits fully aligned with this clean, whole food, mostly unprocessed way of eating. But I'm gonna embrace those intentional choices as the splurge and the enjoyment that I love. And that's really allowed me to have a a great balance and never feel restricted. And that's how I teach my clients to approach any social situation, and I guess should caveat that with, obviously, if you're really trying to reverse a medical condition, or, you have an allergy to something, it probably isn't a good idea to, eat unaligned. But for, normal people, one small slice of turkey or small piece of apple pie isn't going to throw you off the wagon if you don't let it throw you off the wagon. And that's really where that philosophy of intention over perfection comes in.
I think that is such an important statement, because Peter and I have had this discussion before, Peter, and I hope I don't overstep, but you've mentioned that you've been to places where you've had just nothing but a vegan meal, but you feel restricted, right? Because you're not used to that. And I think that it's setting that intention, and just it becomes habit forming. It's like going from white bread to whole wheat bread, and it's something that you've gotten used to. You just make the change, right? And setting those intentions. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to comment on that, but first, Kathleen said something really amusing. And I have a wicked, devious mind. You said a raw food cookbook, and I was trying to work out how that would work.
Well, you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. You mean a recipe book. I'm sorry. It's just my mind goes down dark tunnels sometimes.
But you're right. Makes no sense, right?
Sorry, Kathleen.
No, it's okay.
I just picked up on that. I'm often accused of being pedantic about words. My fault. Kathy, what I was going to say to you is my son, who's 46, 47, somewhere around there, he and his wife went vegan 5 or 6 years ago, and their 2 youngest children have never eaten meat or dairy at all. So the first Thanksgiving I went to them, I did not enjoy the dinner, and the first Christmas I did not enjoy the dinner, but they have got progressively better ever since. And the last big meal I had with them, which was probably last Christmas, I was impressed. I said, if you hadn't told me there was no meat in this, I would have thought it was it had some beef in it. So everything she did was really good. But what they do, picking up on what you said, every now and again, they don't eat any meat, but every now and again they'll treat themselves and they'll go out and eat seafood. But it might be once every 6 months or so, and that's the only time they stray from it, except if they're away from home and they feel like a coffee, they will have a coffee with cream in it, because they don't like black coffee, or almond if it's available. So they do it intentionally, though. They don't stress about it, and the rest of the time, I think my son looks a bit skinny, but apart from that, they're pretty healthy. So, and the kids are healthy, so that's good. You're talking a lot about, and I think a lot of people think of healthy eating being good for your diet and your physical body. As we heard from our guest yesterday, and as you alluded to a little earlier about the midday slump, correct nutrition has huge mental benefits as well, does it not?
Very huge mental benefits. I was actually reading an article, and it was saying that eating the right foods throughout the day can increase your productivity up to 25%.
Wow.
And I ask people, like, okay, let's take that in half. Let's not even go with the full 25%.
Mm-hmm.
How would your life, business, family, relationships change if you were performing 12.5% better? Like, what would that do for you? Like, that's incredible. But they do say, yes, that, I was reading something yesterday about inflammation, and how foods that are inflammatory, which are typically your processed foods, high in sugars, fats, salts, things that, we can't control in a processed food. You can sprinkle a little salt on your plate to add a little flavor. You can choose how much sugar, but when you buy food that's been manufactured, you don't get to control that.
Oh.
And we're in a society now where we want to eat convenience. And that's where, making these whole plant ingredients or foods accessible, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Like, I don't need you to prepare a whole food lasagna every day for your meal prep, but opening a can of chickpeas and adding them to a sweet potato with a big green, colorful salad could change your afternoon slump and really leave you with that more mental clarity and cognitive function that we all strive for, regardless of whether we're entrepreneurs or, executives or stay-at-home parents that really want to be there for their family and their children. I mean, we all We all need that.
Hmm.
And is that how you mean that? Is that what you mean when you say that eating a plant-based diet can empower you to achieve your biggest dreams? Is it in that way?
Yes, because it allows you to show up at that optimum performance and really step into that person that you're meant to be. I'm working with a client right now, and he says to me, I've never felt more aligned with my purpose than I do now that I've been turned on to eating more plants. And I'm like, I felt that way, but never really, that was never the transformation that I would have promised someone. I would have been like, you're healthier, you might lose weight, you'll have more energy. But he's like, it's the alignment of eating this clean food that makes me feel so good, that makes me perform so much better. And, it's just incredible.
That picks up from what our guest yesterday said. He said there are 38 million Americans on antidepressants. Many of them have been on for years at a time. And his opinion is that the vast majority of those should not be on them if they corrected their diet, right?
And I mean, that's talking about simply about antidepressants. I mean, there's doctors now that are prescribing plant-based eating to cure a multitude of common illnesses and diseases, or at least help you gain control of the symptoms. I'm working with another client who's diabetic, and we actually I work very closely with them to work with their doctors. Like, I am not a medical practitioner. I cannot prescribe or change that. But the power of plants can really yield amazing benefits. So they have to be in contact with their medical practitioner for medication adjustments. And she saw that within weeks. And I was like, whoa, wow. You just, until you start really tracking it and working with people one-on-one, you read about it, but until you see it for your own eyes, you're like, the power of plants is incredible. It's amazing.
So just picking up on something you mentioned a little while ago, Kathy, there is a lot of, and I noticed this grocery shopping too, there's a lot of now manufactured vegan foods out there. Are you an advocate of those foods, or do you think that's still healthier than what we typically eat?
A loaded question, Kathleen. So I have a couple philosophies on this, and I kind of bounce back and forth. I think that the manufactured food industry for plant-based eating, vegan foods, is incredible. The fact that there's such a demand in the market to have these foods that are animal-free, are dairy-free, a lot, even the gluten-free, that's amazing. And I love that there's a demand. What my concern with it is that people are doing a one-to-one replacement, and they still aren't tapping into the clean, whole food. And so those foods are getting a bad rap, right? Like, I ate vegan for 5 years. I was eating at all the vegan restaurants. I was putting vegan cheese on everything. I was at least 40, 50 pounds overweight. And, knowing that was the trajectory that I was on, seeing the pre-diabetes signs, having that afternoon slump before I really cleaned up my diet, makes me less excited to recommend those products. Now, that being said, there's no cholesterol in non-animal based products. So yes, there's fat and oil and salt and sugar and all the things that, are a little more inflammatory, don't lead necessarily to the best health, but there's no cholesterol. They're less inflammatory because there isn't the dairy. So when I work with new clients, I'm like, it's good to find an alternative, especially if you need to go to, you want to go to a restaurant or you want something quick, but really lean into how you can make things from whole foods. And I always get oh my gosh, I don't have time to make my own burger. And I'm like, I understand that. I don't always have time to make my own burger either. There are some brands out there that don't have the oil, salt, and fat, and they are more of a whole plant burger. They're not they're made with ingredients you can recognize. And that's what I tell people, like, lean into those foods that are made with ingredients you recognize, and really kind of make it an intention. For me, I'll just open up a can of chickpeas and cook those in place of maybe the vegan chicken nuggets that might go in something else, or the vegan shredded chicken, just because I want a more whole food.
Mm-hmm. I know the veg burgers you're talking about. I'll probably be having them this weekend. They're a favorite of my son's when he is away from home. And when he cooked them a couple of months ago, first time I went up north with him to our development there, and he said, we're going to have veg burgers. I said, hey, these look like the genuine article. He says, taste it. I tell you what, they weren't bad. They're not quite the same as beef, but for me, and I lived most of my life in Africa where I ate red meat every day and often twice a day. So for me to say I quite enjoyed a vegan burger or veg burger is quite an admission, but they were not bad. So getting back to something we sort of touched on earlier, and I think certainly I came along this route, and before I met Kathleen and before my son got involved with the vegan foods, I always thought that people who wanted to eat vegan or vegetarian were worried about diet. But really, you're saying we should look at it through the lens of wellness rather than purely diet. So it's a lifestyle and a wellness attitude. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's one of the big things that I work through with a lot of my clients is shifting from the diet mindset to the lifestyle mindset. Because to me, and this is probably why the diet industry so big, right? Diets are short term.
Yes.
So you're constantly having to go back on a diet to get to the outcome that you want. But when we shift it more to the day in and the day out lifestyle habits, it allows you to maintain your wellness, right? So I've briefly touched on weight loss. So 2 years ago, I cleaned up my diet and eat this day-to-day whole food, plant-based, mostly unprocessed. 6 months in, I'd lost 35 pounds. I've continued to lose and maintain that for 18 months.
Wow.
So it's not the yo-yo. Thank you so much. It's not the yo-yo that I used to have, right? I always joke with people, like I was the Weight Watcher that saved all my points. I would eat zero foods all day, save all my points, and then binge on a bunch of junk food at night. I never learned how to make it a healthy lifestyle until I really shifted my mindset to focus it more on daily habits versus the counting and the measuring and the calories. Like just eat the right whole food most of the time.
All right. Sorry, Kathleen, I've got to add something in there. Another question for Kathy. If you're looking at lifestyle and wellness, then do you advocate improving exercise for most people?
Yeah. So there's 3 like main pieces that I recommend or encourage within my clients, and things that we talk about, in our general conversations. Movement every day, hydration, because the more plants you eat, the more fiber you eat, which means you want everything to continue to move through you nicely. And then just eating more plants in general, and that being able to kind of push that trifecta and then hold people accountable, empowering them to make the decision and then holding them accountable really pulls it together to allow them to create that lifestyle.
Okay. Wow. Good. Kathleen, something else?
So when we talk about a plant-based diet, for people out there who are just listening, might think, okay, is she talking about eating salad every single day? Can you share with us what a typical meal would be in your household?
Absolutely. And it's funny because I just posted about this on LinkedIn. I said, I get the question all the time, or people will say, oh yeah, I ate more plants and I had a really big salad. And I was like, that's awesome. What else was in it? And they're like, well, veggies and some fruit and a really yummy dressing. And I was like, how long were you full after that? And they were like, oh, well, I had to have a snack a couple hours later. And I said, have you considered adding a cooked whole grain or half of a sweet potato? Really balancing out your plate with the unrefined carbohydrates. Like, don't everybody panic. I'm not telling you to eat donuts and white pasta. Unrefined whole carbohydrates. They keep you satiated longer. Potatoes have like a 300+% rating on the satiation index. They are the most satiating food you can eat. So maybe you boil up some potatoes or bake some potatoes or cut them into wedges, saute them up with some peppers and onions, something to add some bulk to that salad. So you aren't grabbing a snack. But typically, like I can go through my whole day. It's like I said, I'm very simple and I'm very habitual. My breakfast is usually something with oats or quinoa, usually oats or quinoa with fruit. I like blueberries. I like apples. So maybe blueberry oatmeal and sweetened with some maple syrup, some ground flax, and some non-dairy milk. Quinoa, I might mix with apples, cinnamon, a little maple syrup, flax. So you're seeing that there's some commonalities that I eat throughout the morning. Lunch for me is even more simple: starch and salad. It can be a sweet potato. And then what I love about my salads is I always try to make them really colorful. Red tomatoes, orange carrots, maybe some broccoli sprouts or yellow bell pepper. I'm going through the rainbow, maybe some broccoli, some greens, some chickpeas or black beans, beets, anything with lots of color. Maybe I'll add some blueberries to that if I didn't get them for breakfast. And then I always try to go for an oil-free sauce or dressing made from the whole fat foods. So maybe it's a, cashew-based sauce or tahini, which is sesame, or an avocado, smashed avocado with some lime juice, just really pulling in the whole fat. So I'm getting the nutrients and the antioxidants and the fiber from the full ingredient. And then my dinners vary. I'm an author of 3 cookbooks. So, I love to be in the kitchen and I love to cook. I do anything from, pasta with broccoli and maybe veggie balls to baked potatoes with, like a cashew cheese and broccoli. I really like broccoli, so I eat that a lot. Noodle bowls, lettuce wraps, spring rolls, enchiladas filled with potatoes and beans in a yummy enchilada sauce. It really is about kind of how can I take foods I already love, flavors I already love, and use plant-based ingredients. So I'll tell people, like, you love pasta with meat sauce, use lentils. You love tacos, try potato tacos or bean and veggie tacos. Really kind of see how you can add more of the plant foods you already love to the foods that you already like.
I need your cookbooks. I absolutely need them.
Yes.
Sounds
good. Kathy, the majority of your clients who come to you for help, do they come because they've had a health scare? Do they come because they've suddenly been reading, watching, and woken up to the fact they should improve their lifestyle? What's the trigger for people to get hold of you?
It's actually both of those. Usually there's some type of scare or realization, like they've hit a pivot point. Some people step like for me, they step on the scale and they're like, whoa, I need a change. They might have read about it. They might have heard about it. Other people have heard about it and they've read all the books, but they either don't know where to start, or they've tried and stopped so many times, and they're finally ready for that accountability piece. And, one of the things that I love about working with clients is that I can make it very customized. So, I might have clients that have a weight loss goal, but somebody else who has a medical issue. And then somebody else who's like, I don't want to have a scare. I want to take control of it now. And the beauty of the way that the program's designed is they can have any, the goal is to eat more plants. The why that drives it can be different for everybody. And that's the beauty of really structuring it as this community-based program, because people can learn from each other and see the benefits across the board rather than being very siloed into one specific why.
Right. I got another very quick one, if I may. Would you say, in your opinion, the regular medical fraternity, general practitioners, family doctors, are they becoming more prone to advising people to look at diet and lifestyle than just dish out prescriptions all the time? Is there a shift?
I think we're on the very, very beginning of the shift. I was speaking with somebody the other day, and she's done a lot of epidemiological studies, and she's very involved in the I'm going to call it a trend, but the growth of the movement. And she was saying that, thinking about the health of people right now to where it could be in 10 years if they made decisions like this now, they'll be so far ahead of the curve that they won't go on that trajectory that typically we have. If I had let myself go, I put air quotes around that, and followed that trajectory of pre-diabetes and just not taking care of myself, even as a vegan, I could be on a trajectory of fistfuls of medication and, one symptom or one illness after another. And that just, I think we're on the beginning parts of this movement to changing our lifestyle in order to keep us from the traditional trajectory that's become so common that people don't even recognize how scary that is, that it's so common.
Right. No, thank you. Kathleen, back to you.
Well, we're running low on time.
We're running out of time.
Yeah,
Yes.
unfortunately, I could go on and speak with you
Oh,
for
absolutely.
another hour. My goodness, Kathy, we're going to have you back. That's. But please, can you tell our audience how they can contact you and also how they can get your books?
Absolutely. So my main website is VegInspired.com. VegInspired.com. All of my cookbooks are linked there. And I'm also extremely active on Instagram. I manage my own Instagram. So I'd love for you to connect with me there. It's Instagram.com/VegInspired. It's, VegInspired is my thing. You can search that. And I know Peter said he'd put some additional links in the description. So I'm happy to share. We briefly touched on some recipes, but maybe the apple quinoa recipe would be good to drop in there for all of you as well. So
great.
Love that.
Excellent. Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this. It's been really good, and I've learned a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And thank you again, everyone, for tuning into our show. And we love reading your comments. So again, please keep those coming. And until next time, everyone, take care and bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.